I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creek Devil. Chuck, would you like to start this one off?
Sure. Be more than happy to. Today we got a really good guest on the show, William Lunsford. And William, you and I have been friends for a pretty long time, and it's sure to get you back on the show and on a show. And if you would, kind of start off what got you interested in the subject, and kind of talk about some of your encounters and your sightings, and we'll go from there.
Man, I'd love to. Thank each of y'all for this opportunity to be in here, to be with your show. Again, thanks to our military and service people, our veterans, for giving us this opportunity as well. Chuck was my very first podcast that I ever did. I've been doing Bigfoot now for 46 years. And I'm located about 18 miles north of Fouke, Arkansas, and most everybody here knows, Fouke is pretty much the only equivalent it has is maybe out there at Bluff Creek as far as that goes, as far as, you have Patty from Bluff Creek, and then you have the Fouke Monster. And so I was not a big believer in high school. We had some encounters out there. I lived on a little farm out there on a place called South State Line, which is one side of the road was Texas, the other side was Arkansas. It was rural. And we had a lot of reports there from people, some strange things going on. But then at that time, as a kid, you're really excited. And we had some encounters there where my dad and some of the men from down the road there, they went into the woods, but they couldn't find anything. And so I ended up there by the time I got in high school. We had moved down off of this farm back into town, into Texarcana, which was about 18 miles from this area that I used to fish a whole lot of. So anyway, whenever I went down there, every afternoon I was a teacher's aide for my coach. And so I was a senior in high school. And again, it was interesting, but it wasn't anything that I really believed in. And so I had been fishing this area since I guess since I'm probably 3 or 4 years old with my dad. I was 17 at the time. And so whenever I would get out of school, I would, my coach and I would sit there and I would grade papers. He and I would pump iron. I was fixing to go play college football. And then I would go down, he would let me go down and fish and get an early start that afternoon. So I was in a place down there called Days Creek. Days Creek is actually kind of part of the Sulphur River watershed down through there. It empties into Boggy Creek, empties into Day Creek, and Days Creek ends up into Sulphur River. So I was down there fishing one day, and man, that was my element right there to do that right there. Really loved it. And I had seen tracks there before, but I kind of attributed those to being beavers or something like that, slide, beaver slide and things like that. So I wasn't any kind of, never had any kind of experience except for that right there. And so one day as I was going down there, the coach had let me go. So I was down there fishing, and whenever I did, I had to cross one creek called 4 Mile Creek. I had to walk probably 1.5 miles to get all the way to the place where I wanted to go. But as I walked down this creek, walked down this gas line, I noticed this really bad smell. And of course, that place there with all these gravel pits, some people call them borrow pits, where you get the gravel out and then nature reclaims it and then it gets full of fish. And I had been fishing these for years. And so as I was walking down the road that had the borrow pits on both sides right there, like again, the stench just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Well, about a week to a week and a half before I had been down there and had been fishing, and I had parked at a different place. And I had come to reclaim some of the baits that I had lost in the tree. So as I was walking back down this gas line there, something began to pace me there on the side. And, there for a while, I kind of thought, of course, my buddies knew what I did. And going down there as far as fishing in the afternoons. And I figured maybe some of those guys had followed me down there, when we're over there inside the woods trying to scare me. So I'd stop, I said, man, I know you're there. You ain't scaring me. Well, again, sit there, but I still smelled this smell. And I had this smell, and it was really bad. It was not like a roadkill. It had more of a stench, a very stagnant stench to it. So I had been smelling that, and like I said, and going down there, hearing what it was that was pacing me. So I stopped. Whenever I stopped, this pacing would stop, and I'm like, oh man. So I started up again. I thought, man, your imagination's running wild with you. And it really shouldn't, because I was 6'2" and about 240, as I said, fixed to play college football. But still, when you're down those woods, you know what's capable of. We have panthers, we have bears, we have hogs, we have all kinds of wild animals. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's one of them. Nowhere in my mind am I thinking it's any kind of creature like the fountain monster. So I get down to where I have to go down the creek to go down to a ford across the creek. And this thing had been, after the time it had been pacing me, I kind of started jogging. Well, it kind of started picking up its pace, so I knew that I was the subject of its attention. When I get down to this place where I go to the ford there, I step into the woods, and this thing screams at me. Man, it screams loud. Like I said, it's like one of the base, I guess you call them woofers there at the stop sign when people pull up to you, because like I said, when it screams, my clothes are actually vibrating. But I've never heard that before. Like I said, I'd heard panthers, I had coyotes, and like I said, we had bears down there, and it wasn't anything that was that I had been familiar with before. But I knew the scream right there was very, very definitely something that had been paying attention to me, and it was loud enough to do me harm. So I take off running through the woods there, again, dodging snakes and everything else too. I cross the ford in the creek, get back to my vehicle, go back there, and then there's nothing there. I'm like, well, man, you just dodged a bullet here, but whatever it is gone. I didn't see it. So that afternoon I went down, bought me a Bowie knife, and began to carry that with me then after that. Well, then this day here, as I'm telling you about, it's about a week and a half later, I'm there, and as I'm picking up this bad stench, there's nothing that's different. There's like a little southern wind, to pick it up pretty strong, but there's not anything indifferent. It wasn't where everything was quiet or anything else like that, but usually there were some rabbits, or you'd see rabbits, or sometimes you'd see the birds, and there wasn't any of those running out in front of me as I go down the road like there normally was. I get down to a place that we call the crossroads there, and it gets down to where I'm going to go fish my last 2 or 3 gravel pits and then go back to the house. Well, as I'm crossing the crossroads, which is on the gas line, I look down this logging road, and there's gravel road, and whenever I do, there's a shadow over there. It's on the left-hand side of the road that I never had really noticed before. But just being springtime, had been running track. It was the first time not the first time, part of the first few times I've had to get down there and do some fishing at that time of the afternoon. And so I sit there and looked at it, and I thought, oh, that's strange. That's not supposed to be there. But then I thought, oh man, again, your imagination going with you. And I thought, well, that's, with what had happened to me a week and a half ago, I thought, oh, that's something there. But I just went on there, kind of kicked it off, and then I stopped again. I had that feeling that my sixth sense that you get, that when something's not right, not necessarily in danger, but that things are not the way they're supposed to be. So I got in there and I stopped a little bit and looked down through there, and I'm staring at whatever this shadow is, and I'm like, man, you're bigger than this. You just need, you need to go on back here and do your fishing and get on back. Well, so I start walking across this crossroads. Right as I get about to the edge of the woods, this thing starts to stand up. This shadow does, and it's black. Looks like it may have some black or brown or a little reddish tint to it, but it starts to stand up. It's mostly just dark color. He stands up. He's got in front of his face, he's got a limb with his left arm, and whenever the limb gets back to the place that it's supposed to be, he continues to stand up. And this thing ends up being 7.5 to 8 foot tall. So when it does, like I said, it turns loose the limb. It walks there, and right in front of me in the road right there, there was nothing in front of he and I but just air, a little bit of grass there for where the high line had stopped right there. And I'm sitting there looking at this thing, and I'm trying to think, oh my gosh, what is this? I didn't believe it was a fountain monster at first. I thought, man, that's got to be a bear. I'm like, no, that's not a bear. Like I said, he stopped. He's swaying from one leg to the other, just kind of balancing. And I'm like, no, that's not a bear. And I thought, well, maybe that's a sloth. And wasn't a sloth, because we don't have sloths down here. Finally, I just had to come to the full realization that what I was looking at actually was the fountain monster. Where this occurred is probably about probably 2.5 to 3 miles as the crow flies from where the creature from the Ford incident of the Legend Boggy Creek back in 1972, just straight through the woods there. And all of a sudden, like I said, you don't have to hit me with a stick to realize I'm looking at something that I never have seen before. And I was scared to death. And man, I wanted to run. And I could run good. I could run a mile. I could swim. But man, I could not move. And I'm sitting there, and this thing is sitting there just looking at me. His eyeballs are glazed into my eyes, man. He hasn't turned his head from me a little bit. His eyes are just black as they can be. Like I said, as he teeters a little bit, as the sun is starting to set, you can see a little bit of glint in the hair. But like I said, mostly he's either dark black, chocolate brown. He looks at me, and I'm like, oh, Lord, this is how I'm going to die. And first thing I did is said, Lord, just, if this is it, just take care of my mom, and let him find my body, because my dad passed away when I was 12. This was several years ago. And so whenever I had done that. So anyway, he's sitting there looking at me, and whenever he does, he turns and walks back to the very same tree wherever he was whenever I saw him. He grabbed the same limb, he pulled it up to his mouth, he put one of the limbs in there, and he pulled all the leaves off, what we call skin the cat down here in Arkansas. So anyway, he did that right there. He chewed for a minute, and he walked back into the road again there. And then whenever he did again, he begins to sway from one foot to another. And that's when I truly thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to die. So as he sits there and he postures to me like, you don't want to come down here. And I'm like, oh, you don't know how true that is. But he made it very clear that that was his territory. And I began to formulate in my mind what I was going to do if I was going to try to get a chance to get away. I thought about running. Like I said, I was a very good miler. But I knew he could outrun. Wasn't any way you're going to outrun him. Also, I thought about diving into one of these gravel pits. I could swim really well, diving underneath the water, trying to swim to the backside and crawling out that way. Well, as I'm sitting there, and man, I've got tears running down my face. Man, I'm hyperventilating. I can't even think correctly. The only thing I can think of, this is it. Lord, if you don't help me, just don't help him. And he began to take a step, and when he did, I thought he was going to turn towards me. Well, he wheeled on his left leg. He took 2 steps. And he was off the road. Another step, he was inside the woods, and then I couldn't see him anymore. And man, I'm sitting there again, not knowing what to do. I'm still crying, sitting there again, hyperventilating, wiping the tears from my eyes. I've got my Bowie knife out that I'm thinking, at 17 and bulletproof, and I'm going to do something with that. But anyway, finally it came to me that, buddy, if you're going to do something, you better go. So I began to run, and I thought, well, if I got these pits here on the left, if I can't outrun him, then I'm going to dive in this water. So I just continued to run. I had, about 1.5 miles to go. I went back to Days Creek, back there where I had crossed, went back to 4 Mile Creek, and 4 Mile I had actually waded through. I jumped across 4 Mile, and then whenever I did, I came up on what used to be an old where they used to dump garbage and things like that. And I think that might have been what a lot of the key was with this creature being down there. And so I ran across this field, and whenever I did, it's old dumping ground, old landfill. So I come one deal there, maybe 100 yards there, that's got a canopy of trees. And man, it was so much darker than what the open field was. And I thought, he's going to get me right here. Well, I get down to where the gate is, where I'm parked. Man, I throw my tackle and my knife over the gate. I dive through the gate, get up to my vehicle. My key hits the mark the first deal. I start my vehicle, and I'm looking around, trying to take inventory of myself. And whenever I do, man, I realize my tackle's outside. I'm like, oh, shoot. Well, like I said, it was given to me by somebody that's very, very special to me at the time. I didn't have enough money to buy something like that, so they went to work and bought it for me as a gift. I got in my car. I pulled up there, threw it in the pasture side, and then I went back to Texarcana. So when I went back to Texarcana, man, I just knew right then if it would have stepped back out, I would have had a wreck, because I was driving. It's about like that you're in something that's surreal. You don't have a pigeonhole where to put this at. You're thinking, is this really real? And you know it is. So anyway, I got back to Texarcana. I got inside, flopped down in my recliner there. As soon as I walked in, my mom looks at me, and she sees the tears. She sees how disheveled I am. She's, son, what is wrong with you? And I said, Mama, you're not going to believe me, but I saw the fat monster. And she just kind of giggled a little bit. And she said, the fat monster? And I said, Mama, I saw the fat monster. Of course, she knew I was being truthful. She knew my character. And she said, son, she said, are you sure? I said, Mom, I'm sure. So anyway, as we talked a little bit, she said, well, I just don't believe I'd tell anybody about it, and which was really good advice. Moms are the ones that believe you. That's what moms do. But I didn't take her advice. I told my coach, and I told my best friend, and man, they laughed like crazy. Like, man, we know you saw something, but you didn't see the fat monster. I'm like, yeah, I did. And so anyway, after that right there, there's a whole lot of difference between somebody listening and somebody believing. And because neither one of the people that I was really close with, besides my mom, believed me, then I just shut up, and I didn't tell it for a long, long time. And then I thought, well, man, I never went back to that place by myself, never. And then about 8 years later, after I had gotten married and I had my little nephew with me, I was on a place called Mercer Bayou, which is down there at Sulphur River. And I had a brand new boat, and I didn't know how long it would take me to get back from the bayou. It was probably 13 miles down there, and it's just a bunch of curves and shallow water. There's a place that you have to slow down. I didn't know how long it would take to get back. But anyway, we get back. Me and my nephew caught a lot of fish. He's 8 years old. We're having a good time. I go up there and get the truck. I back my truck down to the ramp, pull the boat onto it, pull up a little bit. And when I do, we're laughing, and all of a sudden we get the same scream that I had the one day before. And I see him stand up over there in the corner of the boat ramp. and he takes off running back down towards the bayou. Well, man, my nephew's just freaking out. What was it? I said, Chris, I said, get in the truck. Oh, I said, get in the truck. He said, well, I said, get in the truck. So he gets in the truck. I don't even tie my boat down. I drive about a mile up there to where Highway 237 is. I get out, I tie my boat down, then I head back to Texarcana. I realized right then, from 1977, I began to study these creatures, but there wasn't a whole lot there at that time. You know, you had a little bit of the Patterson-Gimlin film. 1972, you had Momo. I remember, tell folks remember as a kid that you had a show there on Dennis the Menace called The Creature with Big Feet. And that was about all there was as far as to associate with me. So I tried to look through there. Wasn't much, but in 1985, there was a lot more. So I began to study and realized that his territory and mine overlapped. And I wanted to have some control in this situation as well. So anyway, whenever I did, then I began to study, and then of course everywhere I went, man, I was armed, and it kind of the sighting that I'd had the first time, it changed what was innocent about the woods, man. Because man, I still love the woods, but I don't go anywhere now unless I'm armed, and it's not for a kill. It's just not in the animals I mentioned before, the panthers, bears, and everything else. That's one thing. You know, of course, people can be as dangerous as others, but just in case I had to defend myself, and that's the only reason. So I knew right then it wasn't my intention to become a Bigfoot researcher, but I was working at UPS, and as I began to kind of shake off the spooky, so to speak, I began to ask some people there. I had a route that went up into the Ouachita Mountains. I had a route that went into towards El Dorado, Arkansas, which was east. I had one that went into Texas, down there towards a little town called Naples, and then I had one there around Texarcana. And so I began to ask people every now and then, and some of them would laugh, and whenever they would, you know, and they would just really let me turn off this flare. There we go. And so whenever they would laugh, you know, I would just kind of laugh with them. Well, every now and then, you know, you would get somebody that would say, well, man, there's some strange things that happens around here, you know, and so, you know, I would appreciate that. Then you'd have somebody say, oh, well, you know, there's no such thing. And then you come back, you know, maybe 2 or 3 trips later, and somebody say, man, you remember asking me about was there anything strange I'd ever seen or heard out here? Then they would share a story with me. So I began to pick up these stories from other people and realize my encounter was not unique. A lot of people within 70, 80 miles in all 4 directions, north, south, east, west, were having these encounters. And so it changed the way I did things. I started looking whenever I'd see something in the woods, and if I saw an animal, and you know, and instead of I would start thinking prey, you know, rather than just an animal out there in the woods. If I saw trails, I would start looking to see what was different about the trails, if anything. And I began to see a lot of tree snaps. These things, at least here in Arkansas, very good. They like to snap trees. And they like to manipulate structures into some of the most beautiful designs you've ever seen in your life. So anyway, I began to study all that, again, talking to the other people and hearing the accounts from them. I never listened to any podcasts. There was some people that had podcasts and things that were starting out, but as I told Chuck, you know, told you before, I wanted my research to be my own. I didn't want to be influenced by anybody else. And so, but I was out in the woods. If I was out there driving at UPS, I had probably 300 miles drive per day. And right there in the edge of the woods there around Sower River, I was steadily scanning the edge of those woods and things like that to see what there was. And the more that I did, the more I learned. The more I learned, all of a sudden, you know, I'd have people that would tell me things. They would invite me to their house or to their property that they had once, you know, they had become comfortable with me. And so I learned that, you know, these things are far more common here in Arkansas than what people wanted to let on there. And so, again, I kept it quiet. I had a good friend named Stephen Hill. He's now probably my main research partner. He and I have been friends for 30 years, but we both got married live, took some different turns. He reconnected with me, and one of the first times that he and I had been out, we were playing softball, and I'd had a report from up around Gillum, Arkansas, which is right around the foothills of the Ouachita Mountains, right there around Cuzn River. And so I went up there to check it out as we were playing softball. Well, I never said anything to him. Well, 30 years later, we reconnect. And Stephen goes, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He goes, the day that we went down there to Cuzn River with the low water bridge, he said, well, we Bigfoot hunting. And I just died because that was really, perceptive on Stephen's part. I said, yes, Stephen, we were. So, man, very fortunate to have him as a partner. Stephen's really great. I've got 4 of the guys there that research with me, and I've got about 5 or 6 different areas. And so I spend a lot of time in the woods right now. And I've got, oh man, if I told you how many sightings I had, you'd swear that I was telling you a lie. But, I'd had a bunch there before I ever met Chuck there. We discussed some of it, and we've had more now. And with all these different areas, each of them appear to be different. And I used to think that all Bigfoot were the same, and they all look the same, but they don't. Man, we've got Bigfoot around here. We got some that have the round heads. We got some have the cone heads. Some appear to be more robust, just like what you would expect them to be. And some, can be a little bit thinner. But I sent y'all some pictures there, and as you can see, I've probably got 50 really good pictures. I mean, that are clear that you can see. And then as far as for blob squatches, man, golly, we probably got 100. I don't put anything out there that you can't see a face on. You can't see unless there's some extra evidence that's going to back that up. But to have those like that, again, be very, very, very thankful, very fortunate. And then even while we're talking right now, I've got like 8 cameras, in the woods, and got 4 more here at the house. So I generally keep game cams out in the woods all the time, and to get those pictures, and they're actually hunting while I'm sitting here doing other things. So man, I have really been very fortunate. Like I said, the research buddies I've got are great. One of them has his own private land. He lets me come up there and research, and he saw one about 9 foot about 4 years ago, eyeball to eyeball, while he was sitting in his deer stand. And so he called me and contacted me, and I thought he'd never ask. He goes, well, man, would you come up here and check this out? Man, shoot, the highway curled up behind my truck, buddy, because it was time to get there. So again, to have that right there, I get probably 5 or 6 posts or calls a week from people who've had experiences or recent experiences, or wanting to ask questions, let me know, I've had this happen. They'll kind of give me an idea, and I try to get on my maps and cross triangulate, and see what it would that might that caused these Bigfoot to be in this area. And of course, the name y'all have here, Creek Devil. There's one of the most famous lines in any Bigfoot movie is from the Legend of Boggy Creek, and it's where Vern Stearman, the narrator, goes, "They always travel the creeks," and they do. Many of the encounters I've had have been around the rivers. We've got 13 rivers here within 60 miles of Texarcana. I've got Texarcana, Arkansas, Texas, then I've got Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, and then I've actually researched in Tennessee and Montana, and they're all there in those states. I mean, I'm very readily seen. So with that right there, like I said, where I live at, some people call it Monster Central, but the Falk area is still very hot. And then we have some there at the edge, about the foothills of the Ozarks. We've probably got 6 or 7 areas, man, that are just, the creatures are here. And there's, in my opinion, there's many more than what people want to, many more want to realize, or many more want to acknowledge. So again, I've gotten probably about 7 or 8 pictures this year. I got some this week, as a matter of fact. I've seen 2 already this year, and the last I saw was on May the 24th, and about the last 7 sightings I've seen, coincidentally, have been in the daytime. And so everybody thinks you have to go out and have that night investigation. Well, yeah, their food that they eat roams around at night, so they're out at night. But Bigfoot, if they're comfortable in the area, does not have a problem being seen in the daytime. They don't necessarily have a problem being around people, where a lot of people do not get the evidence that they want. They go in there that one night, and then they're gone, kind of like they do on some of these TV shows. Well, me and Stephen have been in this area here for about 6 years now, and some of them have become accustomed to us. I believe that with all my heart. And so once they do that, they tend to be themselves a whole lot more than they would be. Or of course, they're always elusive. I haven't had one come up to sing Kumbaya or anything else like that. But they know where my cameras are. And that, man, we have our game cameras set out there. We don't just time the trees, but we get in some of these big clumps of brush or this piled up there, and we'll stick them back in that brush about a foot and a half, so that they can't see them. Before I ever put them out, I'll spray them down, with the anti-scent. And then when they walk by, it tends to get their picture. And so again, we bait them up. We use candy bars to bait them in. They have a sweet tooth just like I do, and but they come in, and so we'll get their pictures. Sometimes they get really angry, and then they'll throw your camera, and then you got to spend quite a bit of time trying to find it. I've got 2 in the woods right now I cannot find them. But then I looked at some last night I had that he had thrown, and then there's pictures of the Bigfoot on there as well. So anyway, that's just kind of a basic overview. My son researches with me. My wife researches with me. And it's something that I never really thought that I would be into. I've had people call me monkey chaser. Well, I didn't set out to be a, quote, monkey chaser. A lot of people don't believe Bigfoot are apes. I don't know what they are. Nobody knows for sure what they are. But with the different kinds, you've got the skunk ape, you've got the southern Sasquatch. You got the ones down here around Falk. That's just they tend to be more like a gorilla around Falk. They tend to have the flat face, the big broad shoulders. The biggest footprint I found here around this Falk, Texarcana, Sulphur River area is 22 inches. The biggest that I have found up there around the foothills of the Ouachitas, there it's about 22 inches. Then I found one in Oklahoma that was about 20 inches, and the rest of them seem to be 16 or 17 inches. But again, very, very fortunate. I enjoy what I do, and let's say the men that I get to research with, and I enjoy sharing what people say. What's your goal, man? Hey, just to share the fact that these things are real, and they are real, and there's no doubt in my mind. And nearly everybody in my family's seen it. All the men that I research with have seen it, except my newest researcher, and that hunts with me, a guy named Jim Owenby. But we went last year. A friend of mine came in from Alaska, flew all the way in from Alaska to go Bigfoot hunting. And man, we got a picture of a 10.5 footer, just as big as you please. And then I went out 3 days after he left and got several more pictures. They were actually standing outside of the wood line, just on the edge, and I was able to sit there and just snap pictures and then blow the pictures up. And then so anyway, that's kind of it. That's just kind of where the background is, but I'm still doing it, and man, I still love it. I'm not monetized. I don't have a Facebook deal or anything. I participate. Thankful for guys like y'all that allow me to be on your podcast, but I do spend a lot of time, and I take it really, really seriously. And and whatever comes of this right here, if they say, well, you can't do it anymore, well, that's just too bad. I've got news for them. I'm not going to quit. I'm not made any money, and I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this because, again, for the love I have of being out in the woods, and also for seeing these things. They're very familial, and by that I mean they're family unit oriented. Last year I saw 2 7-footers and walking down the edge of the wood line there when I got there. And I had slowed really down and was looking for tracks along the side of the road. They never heard me. And so I get there and they're walking down the edge of the woods. When Stephen came up in his log truck about 12:15, he was about 15 minutes late. They took off into the woods. And of course, they knew he was there. They still didn't know I was there. He and I went down, checked our cameras and everything. And before we ever get 50 yards from where the last camera is, we have some of those cameras that send stuff back through your phone line. The alarm starts going off, and we've actually got Bigfoot out in the woods there before we're actually back to our vehicle. So again, thankful for those men. Thankful for the opportunity to share with y'all and what y'all share with us. There's no doubt that Bigfoot is real, and Bigfoot is not just in a Pacific Northwest character. It's not just a California creature. It's not just Canada, but they're all over this United States. They've been seen in every state except Hawaii, and because Hawaii doesn't have any actual natural wildlife, everything they have was brought in by the early settlers years ago. So that's kind of it. So I'll shut up and let y'all ask me anything you want to. If y'all want to start talking, man, I'm here to listen, here to learn.
Well, William, I got a question for you.
Sure.
You said something about having some cameras around your property there, where you live. Do you think they have come up to the house and in your area?
Now my buddy's house, the one that saw the one on his property, the ones that we had around here, we've had a couple of sightings here around Texarcana. I set cameras out to see. Haven't had anything follow me up around in here, but the one as far as the friend that I have up there that had the 9-footer looking at him in his while he was out deer hunting, yes, they followed him back to his house. Stephen has actually had him follow him back to his house. We've had him follow us back to our vehicles. There's one up there that Stephen jokes with me that she's my girlfriend. She actually tends to follow me around, and where I've been, she'll come up after that. We've actually found her footprints right there where I have parked. And then she followed me one day for about 80 yards there. I went to set some candy bars there and to change the SD cards in the camera. And so she followed me around there. So I think they have gotten used to us. But as far as here where I live in Texarcana, I generally have to travel at least probably 10 to 20 miles before I can get into some good area. I apologize for that noise is. Somebody's doing something. I can't get this thing to go off there. So, but anyway, but that's what it is. But they do. They tend to recognize Stephen and I. Man, when I get up there, I can I do a call like a barred owl. I have a plastic little megaphone there, like a little cheerleader's megaphone, and I'll do my call through that, which really amplifies the call of that right there. And pretty soon you get to look and you'll hear them moving through the woods there. And sometimes they scream. Sometimes you can see them again standing on the outside of the wood line, or just sometimes you just you can hear them over there moving. We had one back this January that my buddy Daniel Becker from Alaska, the man I told you about, he was taking pictures, and he had gotten chased up by some hogs into a tree that morning, so he was still kind of nervous. And I carry a gun with me. I carry a 45-70 rifle with me, and then, like I said, not to shoot them, but for the other things. So we've got some animals that are making noise just to the side of us. Daniel's taking pictures. He has a really, really great camera, and so we sit there and we stop. We start looking over there to see what all the noise is. We hear the quote little chatter that you hear from the baby Bigfoot over there. We hear the trees, some of the trees snapping, the limbs breaking. So then all of a sudden it gets just down to where it's quiet, like you've heard of. Well, then we sit there and wait a little bit. So, well, Daniel looks like whatever it is gone. We walk. I said, let me see what pictures you taking. So he sends me some of the pictures. He's right behind me, maybe 10 to 15 feet. And sure enough, they're about 35 yards ahead that I missed because I was looking over to my right to see what the noise was. There's a Bigfoot sticking his head out behind a tree, just sitting there looking at Daniel and I. So we got a picture of that. And then a little bit later on, he ran a drone down there, and he got a picture of a Bigfoot on a drone. But then we have one that lets us know, with all those babies that were down there, we got one down there that lets us know, hey, I'm still around. Don't do nothing stupid. I mean, and it blares us with a screamish type howl that, boy, just so pure. I mean, it didn't waver, and it was loud. And Daniel goes, oh no, what are we going to do? I said, well, I hope she's not going to do nothing. I'm going to just keep my eyes open. But we had nothing else that day. But again, that's one of those deals. So we do have those cameras still out. And a lot of times they pop up on your camera. It has a little time gauge on there. They'll pop up on your camera before you're, again, even back to your vehicle like that right there. And I think that's because of the familiarity they have with us being in that same area.
Now, do you feel any aggression on some of this stuff?
I've had 2 encounters that have been aggressive encounters. Both of those were down around Boggy Creek. One of them I did a TV show this last year with the Travel Channel called These Woods Are Haunted. And they simulated both of those encounters. One of them there I had the first I had was there whenever I first saw the first one. They did that one. Then we ended up not going with the one where I had my dog with me down there, but they did do the one where I had my wife and son with me down there. And this thing charged us that night. And whenever he did, I had to hit him with my spotlight and had my pistol right there. And he began to, at first he was just kind of sneaking around. And I think my wife was probably the catalyst, but this was Easter Sunday, 2014. And so he's coming in mad. Everybody said, well, that's a bluff charge. No, it wasn't no bluff charge. He was mad, or else he had other ideas on his mind. You know, they would react differently around children. They react differently around females. And I think it could have been the female issue, but anyway, so, but the one I had around my dog, he actually was there up on a hill down there at a place called Mercer Bayou, a place called Thornton's Well. And he's up on the hill and he begins to scream just about as soon as I get my dog out of the daggum truck there. And so I've got my pistols, I've got my rifles, I've got my stuff. I'm fixing to try to cast a track. So I get down to where the track is, and it's been so hot like what it has been this year. The dam on it had actually just smoothed out, so I didn't have any place. I didn't have a belt on, so I wasn't able to wrap that belt around to make some kind of mold to pour the plaster Paris in. So we went back, and then as we started back, he begins to scream. So I got my fob on my truck keys and just punched where my alarm is and started doing my alarm, because again, he had hollered really loud. My pit bull at that time, she was a little bit more brave. She realized that, you know, she was very protective, very loving, but then she was also scared to death, and I've never seen her like that right there. When I finally get my door open to my truck, she jumps across from my side of the door on the ground, jumps across my seat, and jumps across the console all in one jump and lands in her seat and just lays down and begins to tremble. But then I had one 2 years ago also up here around the foothills of the Ouachitas there, whenever he came down 1 week there, he came down, charged down. I could see him kind of see the hair and stuff moving around in the brush. And then after maybe 2 or 3 minutes, he ran back up the hill. Well, then I was down the next week to check the cameras I'd set out. He charged back down, and whenever he did, he was not happy, and he did not leave. And I began to get that feeling of foreboding, like something is not something in this tenure is not the same here, because he's more aggressive. And so I waited. I pulled out. I had 2 pistols on, 2 nice-sized pistols. Had a 44 Magnum, and then I had a 10 millimeter pistol. Man, I pull both them suckers out like I was Doc Holliday, because I realized this thing he was angry, or else it was a different one. But I went on back to my truck. So we every now and then you do get the angry Sasquatch as far as that goes. But generally it's because I have one there, the show I did on Travel Channel, and one of the pictures I sent y'all there. She was up there hiding behind a tree, and she was throwing pine cones, throwing sticks, every now and then an occasional rock, and then finally she began to huff at me, kind of doing that stuff right there. Then I'd look and couldn't find her, so I began to turn around and walk away. And so when I did, I just threw my camera up over my back and was able to get the picture. Well, sure enough, there you can see in the middle of her chest, you can see the white face of a baby. So evidently it's right there, not only am I in her territory, but she's got a baby with her. And so I think that's probably what turned that situation to more aggressive than what it would have been. But as a rule, man, truly, if they were going to hurt me, they would have. People, you're not going to outrun them. They can catch you at any time. Because they don't catch you if they're chasing you, it's because they just want you, as a rule, out of their territory, or else they're just playing. They're big pranksters as well. So that's kind of what I have learned from that right there, and I continue to try to learn all the time. But again, like I said, the aggression, I haven't felt it so far, and we've got a lot of them up there. We've got an area up there around the foothills of the Ozark. I mean, the foothills of the Washita's, and like I said, the ones here at Mercer Bayou, Sulphur River, Falk, they tend to be a little bit more aggressive. But those up there, there's a bunch of them, and if it's not the most populated area of Bigfoot in this whole United States, it's one of the top two, because man, they are there. We get a lot of pictures. We start generally about, most time we start there in December, and we'll get pictures on those cameras, and we'll get them just about every day. And we get more, seems to be that we get more of them there that are in March, more pictures in March, and we get more pictures there in October. So that seems to be our prime area here when they're out and about. I truly think that they breed earlier than that, and they actually have their babies more towards January. And because me and Stephen, we found we get a lot of baby tracks, a lot of pictures. I actually have the world's smallest baby Bigfoot track here. It's 3 3/4 inches. And we found that up there at the foothills of the Washita Mountains. And so I've got it casted. And so we actually have a picture there. I sent y'all one. You'll see there's a big blue picture, and that mama's walking by the camera there, and she's got that baby on her left shoulder. She's walking away from us. So again, I haven't had anything, just the aggression. That's kind of, that's not what makes it a fun game, and I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but that's kind of something that you expect. But you don't want to. I wouldn't shoot at one for love or money, man. He would have to be just coming in just really, really close to protect myself, because you do something like that, then that changes the whole dynamic of the situation. These people, down here in the South, everybody's armed. That's the thing about it, and I don't like that. I haven't carried, me and Stephen got a couple areas we haven't taken anybody with us, because the first thing you say is something, man, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to blow his head off. Well, first thing, an ethical hunter doesn't kill anything but that what he can eat. But then once you do that, like I said, you change it, and they can become aggressive. They can catch you. They can pull your limbs from your body. Very, very similar. They've got teeth. I sent y'all a picture there of a Bigfoot bite in my camera. They've got big block teeth, but they have canines that they're not like baboons, but they're almost just barely past where the block teeth are. But they can bite. And so they have got all the advantage if you want to turn it into an aggressive encounter, and I certainly do not. But again, they show their temperament whenever they get their picture took, and they don't like it, because again, well, they'll toss that camera, and you're gonna spend some time looking for it. But that's it's what really, really makes it fun, and nothing is. They're not all the same. Each of them have their own different personalities, just like all of us here on these phone calls do. They all have their own different personalities, and so again, that makes it pretty good. Thank goodness most of their personalities are where they're passive and they don't want to hurt you. They may want you out of there, but they don't want to hurt you. I don't believe that at all.
Hey, this is Tom. I got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Who else in your area has seen these things and has gone out with you? I'm just curious. There's got to be some kind of a repeating pattern, at least with some of the folks in your location who have also seen these things. I'm just curious what kind of a background or what kind of a what have other people seen them? I guess that's what
Sure.
I want to know.
They have, most of the guys that I run with, that are the researchers here, my fellow researchers, most of them are hunters, or most of them are fishermen. You have a lot of encounters from people that are fishing, These things will walk up behind them, or else they'll actually walk up on them. Hunters the same way. They'll do that. My research partner, Stephen Hill, great researcher. He's a great hunter, has a lot of outdoorsman skill. Another one of my researchers, a man named Randy Crawford. Randy is very intelligent. He's a buyer for Georgia Pacific, Georgia used to be IP International Paper. Very smart, very computer savvy. I'm not computer savvy. He is. My friend Shannon Cruz there, the man who has seen the one from his deer stand. I have another friend of mine named Jim Owenby that I'm kind of getting involved into it more. Boy, he's sharp as a tack and very good hunter, very good tracker. He recognizes a lot of things that are out of place. And so he's a big benefit. And the guy that I have there from Alaska named Daniel Becker. Daniel, again, he got to come down. He's very lucky that the 2 times he's been down, both times he's gotten pictures. But also one of my research buddies is a man named Keith Crabtree. Keith was the man who played the creature in The Legend of Boggy Creek. And so Keith gets a lot of stuff down there. Have a lady down there that lives in Bright Star, Arkansas. She calls me right along. She lets me go to her place, and they'll be coming around her house, beating on the side of her house. And so she and I have gone down and looked around. We found the tracks and things. She's got them recorded. She hasn't seen them, but she has their recordings, because they'll just during the spring and the fall, then they'll just kind of just go bananas and start acting up. And so she'll record it, send it to me, things like that. Again, some of the people that I met when I was delivering at UPS, I would joke with them, man, the only reason that Bigfoot's not out here because it's too far for him to walk, and everybody giggle, then every now and then some of them say, well, if you think that, you need to be here about dark, and I'd say, well, I'm afraid of the dark. And then they go, well, you should be. So then I'm like, oh no, so I've got to come back. So again, some of the customers that I had there at UPS, but as a rule, the men that I go out with, like I said, they know, they're not to run. They're hunters. They're very woods savvy. My wife is very good. My wife, she can see into the future just about. She sees things that I often miss there, and things about ladies. Ladies tend to remember more than we do, and things that are out of place. And my son is a dentist. My son is I don't want to sound like a bragging dad. My son is very intelligent as well. So he's very beneficial to my research as well. So so the whole background tends to be we're hunters. We recognize things that are out of place, but then we haven't got our mind, because some of the things that have happened to us out there, we haven't got our mind closed to the fact that, well, no, these things don't exist, because they do exist. There's no doubt in my mind. I tell people, man, if you're looking for a Bigfoot podcast where the guy says, well, if Bigfoot exists, then you need to change podcasts, because you're not going to hear that here. Bigfoot does exist, and I've got the pictures of them to prove it. And I don't know why they will not acknowledge, well, we don't have any evidence, like I said, if y'all saw what I sent to y'all, at least hopefully it's clear enough to say, and that's only about half the really good pictures I've got. And then I've got what's called the blob squatches. They're there. Church-going man, don't have any reason to lie, because the more fame that you get more ridicule than you do praise on these kind of things. So that's kind of how the people that I do stuff with.
I'd like to ask you a question. This is Tracy.
Sure.
You said you'd researched in Tennessee.
Yeah.
What areas of Tennessee, and did you have any encounters?
In Tennessee, I searched around Memphis. My son was at dental school in Memphis, the University of Tennessee Dental School. And so he lived on a place called Mud Island, which is about 1.25 miles down from where he lived, is 1.25 miles down from the pyramid there where the Bass Pro Shops is now. And so when he would be at school, my wife would be there. She'd generally be cleaning or cooking for him or something like that. So I go down and walk down the river. There's several sets of woods right there. And I would walk those woods down there. Man, I found tracks. I found tree structures. I found, of course, animals that had died from my own forensics, but there was no reason for them to have died. And I never had the encounter as far as that goes. But then, most of my time, I would tell my wife I'd be back in a certain amount of time. But then what I'd find, and then I'd go back the next day and try to, elaborate on it and try to expand that. And so, like I said, right there, just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, right there on the Mississippi River. And you would think, there's condo after condo after condo of students there who are going, to University of Memphis, or who are going to the dental school. And so the people are there. There's so many people, but those things actually come up that close. I had 2 or 3 there where, like I said, I found good footprints and everything, and of course I'd ask people, they some of them would just kind of giggle, then some of someone say, you're asking the wrong guy. Well, I want to say, well, why am I asking the wrong guy? Maybe they don't want to talk about it or whatever, but it is right there. Close to Memphis, Tennessee, within a mile right there of Bass Pro Shops on Mud Island. And I was never so surprised as what I was to find those tracks like that right there.
All right, guys, we're getting pretty close to the end here. Any final questions or comments?
No, I'm just, hey, William.
Yes.
I appreciate you coming on the show, and it's always good to hear stuff from Falk, Arkansas. We've had a few things on this show, so thank you very much.
Falk is still active. The creature's still there. I've probably seen the Falk monster or his kinfolk at least 7 times. Most of the time, it's a multiple sighting. It'll be more than one animal down there that you will see. And so with that, Falk still goes on. I keep in touch with the man who has Monster Mark, and then he'll kind of let me know, hey, I heard of a sighting or heard of some sounds, calls, or things like that. So it's still going on. So again, very, very fortunate to live that close and to have people that are willing to share things with me that I might not can find myself. So guys, I appreciate y'all, man. If y'all have a story you want to tell me, I'm all ears. I want to hear it too, because that's how we learn from each other.
That's it. All right, William, thanks you, man. We appreciate you coming on.
Hey, man, I appreciate y'all so much. I've looked forward to this. I appreciate it. And again, me, Chuck, everything I've told y'all is true, and hopefully they say that the big eye don't lie. Hopefully the camera evidence that I sent y'all will back that up, and feel free to use that in any way that you need to corroborate what all has been said.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
Well, thanks, William.
Hey, guys, I
Always
appreciate you.
pleasure.
Y'all too. Hey, man, anytime you need to fill about an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, give me a holler, because I'm always ready to talk about Bigfoot.
All right, we sure will.
Guys, thank y'all so much.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.